Professors FM.
I'm Bridget Stomberg.
And I'm Lisa DeSimone.
And this is Taxes for the Masses.
Today's episode welcomes Brooke Lierman, Comptroller of the state of Maryland, to talk about state-level take-up of the Earned Income Tax Credit.
The Earned Income Tax Credit, or EITC, provides tax relief to lower-income taxpayers. In addition to the federal program, several states administer versions of this credit to address poverty concerns. Despite the success of these credits in reducing poverty, particularly in working families with children, participation by qualified taxpayers is below 100%. In today's episode, we welcome Brooke Lierman, Comptroller of the state of Maryland, to discuss steps the state is taking to increase the take-up of the credit.
Hello, B.
Hello, Lisa.
Today we're talking about the Earned Income Tax Credit, or the EITC, and we've done an episode on this before.
Yep.
But today, instead of talking about the mechanics of the credit, we're really going to focus on its popularity.
Are you saying we're having a tax code section popularity contest? Because if you are, I am here for it.
Don't think that's what I just said.
Okay.
But just in case it is, what I meant was that we're going to be talking about the take-up of the Earned Income Tax Credit, which means the rate at which taxpayers who are eligible for the benefit actually claim the benefit.
Okay. My misunderstanding, but I'm going to ask that we put a pin in that and save the tax code popularity contest for another episode.
I think that's for the best.
Okay.
We have a pretty spectacular and respected guest on the pod today, so maybe we should focus also on keeping things intellectual, elevated, classy.
Okay, so clearly you've got the wrong co-host for that assignment.
Well aware.
Yes.
That somehow, like always, we're going to make do.
Okay. We'll see.
To start, let's recap the federal Earned Income Tax Credit. The credit was passed in the 70s as a, quote, tax bonus to supplement the low wages of working poor parents. Federal credit allows taxpayers to offset not only their income taxes, but also their employment or FICA taxes, which is equal to 7.65% of income from work. So the credit is a refundable income tax credit. If the max credit a taxpayer qualifies for exceeds their income tax liability, it's pretty cool. They can still get the excess benefit in cash from the government, assuming they have an employment tax liability.
It is a pretty cool and unique credit. Unique not only because of the mechanics you just talked about, but also because it has historically had bipartisan support.
Wow.
Which I don't think is a thing anymore. And research shows that it has reduced childhood poverty, reduced income inequality, and led to better maternal mental health outcomes, to name only a few benefits.
Which is like a unicorn. It's not only bipartisan, but it also achieves some pretty good policy objectives.
However, despite these benefits, it is estimated that not all taxpayers who are eligible for the credit actually claim it. At the federal level, the take-up was about 80% in 2013 and declined to just about 76% in 2020. So the take-up is going down over time. What's worse, state-level take-up of similar credits can be even lower. So some of your colleagues, former colleagues at Texas, Andrew Belknap, Anthony Welsh, and Brady Williams, are working with Jeff Gramlich and the state of Washington to understand their low take-up rate of what they call their working families tax credit. It's very similar to the federal Earned Income Tax Credit, and their take-up rate is just about 70%.
Those researchers are trying to broadly understand barriers to claiming the credit and whether paid preparers can reduce those barriers to increase the take-up rate. They find that many people who are eligible for the Washington state credit but did not apply thought that they didn't qualify for the benefit.
Right. So it's not that they didn't want to invest the resources to file the claim. They didn't believe that they qualified for the benefit, even though they 100% qualified for it.
100%.
So to me, that result suggests that there's a lot of education needed about these incentives.
Exactly. Other common reasons for not claiming the credit among eligible taxpayers were not knowing where or how to apply and not wanting to accept money from the government.
You know, I'll accept money from anybody.
Okay, remember, trying to keep it classy today.
Roger that.
So clearly these types of credits to benefit the working poor are extremely important.
Yes.
they have great benefits,
Yes.
and they have widespread support.
Yes.
So it makes sense that governments want to maximize their reach and their impact.
And to do that effectively, you have to understand what exactly it is that's preventing taxpayers from availing themselves of the benefit. And then you have to design systems and supports that can remove those barriers.
And that is exactly what our guest is going to tell us about today.
Today, we welcome Brooke Lierman. Brooke is the 34th Comptroller of the state of Maryland and the first woman to be independently elected to one of the state's constitutional offices. She was elected with over 60% of the vote in November 2022. Brooke graduated from Dartmouth College and the University of Texas School of Law prior to moving to Baltimore. She previously served for 8 years as a member of the House of Delegates, representing part of Baltimore City. As comptroller, she is leading an agency of 1,200 Maryland public servants in 12 offices around the state, working to create a Maryland that is more equitable, resilient, and prosperous. Brooke, welcome to Taxes for the Masses.
My pleasure. It's great to be here.
We like to give our listeners and our students different ideas of paths that one can take in the area of tax, I guess, career paths. So could you tell us, how does one become a comptroller? What is your background? Was this something you aspired to? What was your path like?
Yes. Well, I joke I did not sort of wake up one morning in high school. I attended public high school in Montgomery County, Maryland, and say, I know what I want to do. I want to be the comptroller of Maryland. I think at that time I was not aware that Maryland even had a comptroller. And honestly, this sort of job did not occur to me until I was in the General Assembly. I went to Dartmouth College. I majored in history modified with social movements. I was very interested in organizing. I worked on political campaigns in the field as an organizer. I worked at the Center for American Progress, loved it, but decided that think tank life was not for me and went to law school. When I got a federal clerkship and then a job as a civil rights and disability rights attorney at a great firm in Baltimore, and really loved working with people, loved the organizing part of it, loved writing and thinking and advocating. But there was this whole other side of my life then where I was living in Baltimore City and was really frustrated by sort of the lack of state investment that I saw. And realized it much more living in Baltimore because Baltimore is just much more dependent on state investment.
Right.
Our parks did not have, nearly the tree canopy, and our neighborhoods didn't have the tree canopy that I'd grown up with in Bethesda. The schools in Baltimore did not look like the schools I had attended, right? Our transit system was terrible. And so I decided that I wanted to, not just be a lawyer, but I also wanted to be a citizen legislator. And so I ran for state delegate, which is that we have a House of Delegates, not a House of Representatives in Maryland. So I then became a state delegate, and I did not want to join the Judicial Committee because that wasn't my side. That my other life was doing legal work, but in the House and in the government, what I wanted to do was focus on money. Because what I saw was all about investment and lack of investment. And so I knew I needed to join the Appropriations Committee. And fortunately, the Appropriations Committee chair wanted me and the speaker appointed me there. And so really, it was when I was on the Appropriations Committee that I started learning how government works, how the money flows, where money goes, how it's decided, how it's allocated, who makes these decisions, and then how it gets dispersed. And I started learning more about the role of the Maryland Comptroller. And so eventually we had a comptroller for quite a while. He decided not to run again. And I thought, you know what? I think we should be doing more with that job. I think we need to reimagine how the Comptroller of Maryland can not just be a bean counter, but can be an advocate for families, communities, businesses, to grow our economy in an equitable way and create more prosperity in all communities. And so decided to throw my hat in the ring, and here I am.
That's great. So my follow-up question to that, can you talk a little bit specifically about what your duties are as a comptroller and how that intersects with what we're going to talk about today, which is the Earned Income Tax Credit?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Comptroller of Maryland is a really unique position in state government in America. In the Constitution, the Comptroller says, I have the general superintendence of the fiscal affairs of the state. And then it lists a whole bunch of things. And that is a very broad statement,
Yes.
but also in some ways very narrow, right? And so I like to divide the job sort of into three categories. So first, I am like the elected CFO of Maryland.
Okay.
We see every dollar in and every dollar out of our government. The second piece of the job is that I'm an independent voice for Marylanders on a whole range of boards. And then the third job of the comptroller is that I am the revenue administrator, right? I'm the tax lady, and so I think it's a really interesting role. It's interesting to have an elected tax collector in a state with an income tax, which is, I think, we're the only one.
Okay.
But it also, in some ways, I think it's a really phenomenal position. I mean, it's in many ways, it's a phenomenal position because I really am this independent voice for Marylanders.
Right.
So it's a really unique perspective and a fantastic job that I'm honored to do.
So our topic today is the Earned Income Tax Credit. Can you tell us a little bit of the history of the Earned Income Tax Credit in Maryland? How has it worked in the past in terms of people actually claiming it? Do you feel like it's been fairly successful? What have the challenges been?
Sure. So of course there are, I think this isn't always obvious, but there's, different levels of the earned income tax credit. So there's a federal earned income tax credit. In Maryland, we have a state EITC, and then even some local counties have their own EITC.
Okay.
So there's all different ways that you can earn money from working through the tax code. And I think, just at level, like the earned income tax credit is the most powerful anti-poverty program that the government runs. Because unlike other programs, we don't tell you how to spend the money, right? This is money that we give you that we trust that you will put towards your most urgent needs because you know what they are more than I do. And I think that's really important. It lifts millions of people out of poverty every year. It reduces the severity of poverty. It also supports and encourages work, right? Because this is a working family tax credit. And so but this federal and the state and the local, today we're going to mostly talk about the state EITC, but I do think it's important to note just there's all different levels of the EITC. And the state EITC in Maryland is very generous. And it is it's also available to a wide number of people. So it's available to folks without kids, not just folks with kids. It's also available to people who don't have a social security number. It's available to people who only use an ITIN. And so it's a broadly applicable tax credit for low-income working people in Maryland.
And so what is the take-up rate of the EITC in Maryland today, and how has it changed at all over time?
Sure. So right now we have about 29% of Marylanders do not claim the credit. So we think about 632,000 Marylanders were eligible in 2023. That hasn't changed much over the past few years.
Okay.
And almost 30% of that group of people did not claim it. So, we're around 70%, 71% uptake rate. We are 25th for EITC uptake. We're about middle range in terms of the state uptake rate.
Okay. Wow.
Okay.
Like, why isn't everybody claiming it? Do you have thoughts on why the uptake rate isn't higher?
Sure. So I have a few thoughts, and folks who I work with have theories. One is that some people who don't meet the minimum filing threshold don't file taxes at all, and then therefore don't have a chance to claim the credit. So it may be intentional. They may know about the credit, but not want to file for fear of owing back taxes. Or it may be unintentional. They don't think they have to file and they don't know about the EITC, and so they aren't claiming it. Some just may not know about the EITC at all. And when they fill out their taxes, they're doing it in a way that doesn't prompt them to do it, or they skip it. Some may know about the EITC, but assume they aren't eligible because it can be complex. The eligibility criteria is a little bit complex. It changes based on whether you're single versus one kid versus two kids versus three. So it can be a little bit complex. It changes slightly every year, the income levels. And then some people may not know about free tax prep services that can help them file a return. And those folks may not be prepared to pay a couple $100 and, they don't think it's worth it. So I think there's a host of different reasons. And so because of that, it's hard to target and to know how to target folks to make sure that they actually claim the credit.
So you mentioned it's a very important policy initiative. It's effective at pulling people out of poverty or reducing the effect of poverty. What efforts has the state of Maryland made to try to get more taxpayers to file and be able to claim this really powerful tax benefit? Yeah,
important question. So when I started, this was one of my top goals, is to increase the uptake rate for the EITC, because to me, this is the way that Maryland can really help start lifting kids out of poverty, help lifting families out of poverty, moving Marylanders into the middle class. So I immediately wanted to start looking at ways that we could increase the uptake rate. One of the first things that I was excited to learn about was the direct file program that the IRS has launched. Yep. We are in the program this year for the first time. We're one of 25 states participating in the direct file program. This makes it easier, as you know, for folks to file their state and federal taxes. We believe that almost 1 million Marylanders would be eligible to use direct file. And of course, direct file increases the EITC uptake rate because many people who use it are eligible for the EITC, and it makes it really easy to claim it. And so, direct file is a big deal. We have a marketing budget of $0, but we've been pushing it everywhere we can, getting information out to partners, telling people about it as well. The other thing that we did is we went to the General Assembly and we said, hey, the EITC, you agree that the EITC is really important. You agree so much that you've expanded it. You've made so many more people eligible, but you haven't given us any way to let people know about it. Can you please give us a budget item so that we can publicize the EITC and they said yes.
Yay.
So starting in this July 1st, the next fiscal year, we will have funds in our budget to be able to publicize the earned income tax credit, which I'm excited about. But before we get to that, we wanted to be smart about how we do that and make sure we were spending these limited dollars in a way that would actually reach people. And so we have started an important program, research program with the Urban Institute as well.
That's awesome. Tell us a little bit more about that program.
Sure. So we really want to get to the bottom of why people don't claim the credits and what can be done to shrink the share of unclaimed credits. So we engaged with the Urban Institute Tax Policy Center, the Annie Casey Foundation, the T. Rowe Price Foundation, and others sort of generously have stepped up to help fund this joint effort.
That's great.
So Urban has really good experience with mixed methods research, where they've done both quantitative and qualitative analysis. And that's what we are doing. So we're taking the quantitative data that we have in the Office of the Comptroller, and then we're doing qualitative listening sessions around the state in different representative populations to talk to people about this credit and what they know and what they don't know, to analyze that information, pull it together, and then, basically create a sort of playbook, right? An EITC playbook for how revenue administrators, me, but also any other revenue administrator around the country, how we could go about creating effective engagement campaigns so that our population has a greater awareness of what the EITC is and how to claim it.
That's really interesting. And your comment about a playbook for other revenue administrators leads to our final question, which is, how much do you talk with your counterparts in other states? Do you have those conversations with them, those brainstorming sessions of what have you tried, what has worked for you? Or do you feel like this partnership with the Urban Institute is really your first foray into systematically trying to tackle this problem?
Sure. So I do have good relationships with some of my fellow revenue administrators. It's funny because my job is so unique. I am a member of several national organizations. The National Association of State Comptrollers, the National Association of State Treasurers, the National Association of Unclaimed Property Administrators, and the Federation of Tax Administrators. The FTA.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And so FTA is a fantastic group and do a really good job at keeping us engaged, us revenue administrators engaged, talking to one another about what we're seeing, what's going on, best practices, questions, ideas.
Nice.
So the FTA is a really effective group, very helpful for bringing us together. And they have offered to give us a platform at their national conference this June where we can talk about our findings from the urban study so that we can share more research and data with everybody, which we're really excited to do.
That's great.
That's awesome.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And, really excited about how the work is going. The team at Urban and the Tax Policy Center has been fantastic. And so we're just excited to, keep diving in and get really good data so that we can produce something that's truly helpful for tax administrators across the country.
That's really great. Do you think that there is anything specific or unique about the population in Maryland that might make what's effective for you all in increasing uptake maybe less effective for other states?
No, it's a good question, but Maryland is often referred to as America in miniature.
Okay.
Because we have both, we have rural, we have urban, we have suburban. We have an incredibly diverse population in all ways, including, low income to high income. We also have really demographically diverse. So we also have a large foreign born population. So we have a large number of immigrants. And so I think it will actually be really interesting to take the data that we gather and compare it to what's happening in other states. And I think that we would find that it's not that different.
That's great.
What would you tell our listeners or our students who are interested in getting involved in government and in tax policy? Is your path the right path? Is it law school and then running for the House, or are there other paths that you think are a good place to start?
Yeah, I would say that my path is pretty unique because there just aren't a lot of elected tax collectors in the country. But I think if you're interested in tax policy or tax law, certainly going to law school is a good one. But you don't have to. I mean, look, my dirty secret, I didn't even take tax law in law school. I think some of my friends bought me the tax law examples and explanations book as a joke after I won my election.
That's so great.
So, yeah. So, but there are so many different ways to practice in tax, right? Whether it's becoming an accountant and doing people's tax returns, or whether it's the policy side of things, then I think you want to start thinking about research, whether at a think tank, at the state level or the national level, or even the local level. But also there's really interesting jobs in state government, in tax agencies. So I have a really amazing team in Maryland with some economists, with administrators. I have a policy research team. And so there's really interesting work to do here. I have a comp stat team. I set up a stat team to track all of our statistics to understand what we're doing. And I have a 1,200 person agency. So I think looking at working in state or local government is a really interesting place to look. I think working for good people and doing interesting work is available in every state in the country.
Is there anything that you want to say that we haven't asked, anything that you want to talk about that we haven't covered so far?
Just a reminder, like the EITC is a bipartisan policy favorite. Because it encourages work, but also because it really does improve long-term outcomes for children, for families. It can reduce poverty for community colors and promote racial equity. So I would love to see the federal government really get real about increasing the EITC and continuing to promote it, because it's a tool that really can't be used enough. It's something that is just proven time and time again to do what we need to do to help grow the middle class in the country.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks so much. And then, yeah, when we get the results back, we'll have to share them.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
So
yeah.
Do a little addendum.
Yeah. Time for the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I'm just going to say, like, that was pretty awesome.
I don't think it actually dawned on me how awesome it was until we started talking to her and realizing that, well, first of all, her job is so unique, right? I think she said she's one of the only people who has a specific job. But even abstracting away from that, there's only 50 people in the whole country that do something similar to what she does. And we had one of them on the show.
Because her office reached out to us, which is kind of freaking cool.
Even better. It was totally amazing experience. She was a delight.
And she's a Texas alum like both of us.
Yes, it was great all around. Also great that we've got a government entity, which we're a little bit critical of sometimes for how they make decisions.
We're highly critical of elected officials, and yet we just had a very adult professional conversation with one.
We did. And, she was great sport. But I think one of the things that we often criticize politicians and governments for is just sort of taking what appears at least to be a haphazard approach to creating policy. And she is talking about taking the initiative to obtain the data, to take a data-driven approach to solving a problem that is really important in their state.
Yeah, and I love that she's pairing with researchers who know how to use that data, know what to do with it.
Harkening back to the beginning of this episode, we talked about some colleagues who are doing something similar with the state of Washington. And I love this because I think sometimes academics get criticized for doing research that nobody cares about. That's not what we want. Like, that's not our goal, is let's sit down and write a paper that nobody's going to read and that isn't going to impact anything. But sometimes we don't know what types of research questions would have the biggest impact. And so I love this partnering between a government agency and then an independent, research body to pair their problems and solutions.
I agree.
If I may, another good?
Yes, by all means. Obstinate bee, sure. Yes.
I feel like I deserve a cookie because I made it the whole time. And I didn't ask her about The Wire once.
Aw, you really took my scolding to please keep it classy to heart, and I appreciate you. I heart you right now.
I didn't want to embarrass you while we were out in public, and so even though
yeah, because that would be the first time.
I don't know what you're talking about. There were at least
revolving door.
I knew it. And many others. There were at least two times where I had a solid tie-in to The Wire, and I just left it there. So I'm gonna give myself a cookie for that.
I'm very proud of you. Yes, you deserve a cookie for that. But can I turn to the bad now?
Yes, please.
It's free money.
I know.
Like, why? How are people not taking this free money that has such great benefits? It's frustrating that there's this bipartisan policy and states and the federal government want you to take it, and people are like, oh no, I don't want your money, or oh, I didn't think I qualified.
What I think is so frustrating about this is what you said. It's such a complex thing. It's like we sat down and we tried to do a good, nice thing for lower income families. And I believe if you go back to the initial episode we did on this, there are 13 requirements that you have to meet, and they're not simple and straightforward to understand. So I think what's bad from my perspective is, yes, people are leaving money on the table. It's never going to be 100%, but how much of that is just because it's a poorly designed, overly complicated credit?
So I'm not trying to argue with you, but at the same time, like, if you want it to be targeted at the people who need it the most, then you do need to have, these hoops that they have to jump through so that we're not just wasting money and giving it to people who don't need it. Like, I don't know, a lot of the deductions and credits we have in place today that we're trying to get extended. But I hear you.
I would like to think there's some middle ground. And then another episode that we can draw on is the one about IRS audit rates. And we know that people who claim this credit get disproportionately targeted. And even if they weren't found to have done anything wrong, they stop claiming it. So I do think that a frustration, and again, we're talking about the federal credit here, not the state credit. So no shade to the state of Maryland on this. But there are both design and implementation barriers that I wonder if we couldn't relax a little bit. Your point is totally well taken. Like, we don't want to give it to everybody, but I would like to think that we could do better than 13 requirements, some of which are just really hard to determine and figure out if you qualify or not.
Yeah, that's fair. I think the ugly part of it, like, not only is it that people aren't taking advantage of this as much as they can, people who qualify for it, but also, like, fixing it, I think, is not going to be terribly easy.
No.
And what really sucks is that it's going to be at the times when people need this the most, that the resources to try to make sure that they're educated, that they know where to apply for it, that they know that they qualify for it, those resources are going to dry up.
Absolutely. So think about what's happening right now. Like, the state of Maryland is undertaking this initiative right now because our economy is not great at the moment. We're sitting here, it's early 2025. Inflation is still high. Prices are still high. We're going to enter this time of increasing tariffs very rapidly. So this is a time when those working families who need the money really need to know that they can get access to it. So it's very timely for the state to be doing this research now. But then, to your point, does the state have the resources that it needs to implement whatever suggestions for improvements come out of the research project? And you're right, those things are always going to, I think those things are always going to be tied.
Yeah. We need a better economy and a willingness to spend money on this problem.
Okay, we'll get right on that.
Yeah,
yes,
sure.
Easy peasy.
Right away.
I am hopeful that we can take Brooke up on her offer to come back to the podcast at some point in the future and share the results of the study, because another thing she said that I really liked is how much information sharing there does seem to be across these state agencies. And so maybe if they learn something, if the research looking at the state of Washington learns some different things, maybe we can make some improvements, get some economies of scale and make some improvements across the states without that much investment.
Look at you being such an optimist.
I'm trying.
Well, that's all we have time for today.
Be sure to join us for more tax nerdery on future episodes of Taxes for the Masses.